But without further ado, I want to welcome Suzanne Daniels to the stage. She's going to talk about improving developer experience with open source. Please give her a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And so happy to see you all in person here in Eindhoven, of all places. Really good that you showed up, even though the public transport was horrible. But okay. I'm Suzanne Daniels. I work at Spotify. I'm a developer relations lead for Backstage, which is an open source project. I'm talking here about improving your developer experience. Wait, what? We found out, for the few who weren't aware of what Spotify was this morning, we found out what Spotify is. It's a music app, right? So why am I talking here about some open source tool and how does that relate to developer experience? We're going to find out shortly. But first I have some questions for you, just to understand a little bit if you are here in the right session. Or should have maybe stayed back and drink coffee. So who in the past few years onboarded in an engineering role at a company? Yeah. Okay, so who actually enjoyed onboarding at the company? Whoa, whoa, not that good. Okay, who can find all the documentation they need to do their work properly? That's seriously 2 people. Okay, well, I think that you're then probably in the right session. Who thinks it's easy to collaborate with other teams when they are creating their application? Maybe working with a microservice, another teammate who creates microservices or APIs for other teams. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm talking about today is about developer experience. Because I think if I would go on and ask another few questions, we would all agree that being a developer is super complex nowadays. It's not easy. Why? Well, you don't spend much time on writing your code. Well, what do you spend your time on? Finding documentation? Well, not actually finding, maybe searching for documentation. Collaborating with other teams, understanding how you can make your application work in your whole application landscape. And it doesn't really matter if it's a monolith or microservices, the bleeding edge stuff. It doesn't really matter because you spend a lot of time there. You spend a lot of time collaborating, trying to collaborate together. Chances are that you are working on a feature in your company and using technology that another team already built, already used, already has experience with. That takes a lot of time, figuring everything out. So today I'm here, luckily, to share with you the secret sauce. This is filled with tears of joy of happy developers, by the way. Just so you know that you're aware of that. I came up with it last night. My fiance said it was a good joke, so I'm just gonna go with it. So yeah, I'm here and I work for Spotify. And we created an open source project. We put a lot of effort in making our developers more happy, and we want to share that. So I'm not going to go through this because you've joined the talk before, probably. A lot has been written about Spotify's engineering culture and how we try to make things work. And yes, we have a lot of discussions internally when people talk about the Spotify model. Like, well, it's not our model. We don't recognize this. Or, that sounds actually quite great. Maybe we should try it. Because it evolves all the time. It's super complex, especially when you have an application either on your on the website, in the web app, or on the mobile phone. Each button, each functionality, it probably has a team working, creating that feature for you, and they have to collaborate with that whole machine to make that whole thing work for you. So that's super complex, and we started out, and it got mentioned in the talk before, so I'm happy that that's half of the work, so that's great. Thank you for that. We started out with a monolith. A few monoliths, teams grew, but as we grew and we tried to figure out ways to work together, we figured out how we actually could move to microservices at some point. It became increasingly complex because we had multiple teams working on something, owning microservices, and we needed to know stuff about that, like, hey, where's your documentation? And in the beginning, it's easy. You go to Slack or whatever, and you type like, hey, where's your documentation? But as you grow, it becomes increasingly difficult to do so. Because maybe for 100 engineers, this works. But if you talk about 2,000 engineers, it's becoming already a bit complex. So at some point, it became so complex that when we added engineers to our workforce, we actually did not speed up, we slowed down. So we always say we were in hypergrowth, but onboarding became hyper confusing, right? Because of the different teams and the autonomy, but also because of the different knowledge domains which have been added over the years, there was also a lot of fragmentation. Why? Well, because different teams and different technologies need different tool sets. There is no one approach. And if you try to figure out one approach and it doesn't work for the team, then chances are that they will use their own stuff. They will implement something on their own. And that's a great thing. We were focusing on our speed to market, but yeah, we didn't really came to that. Like we wanted to speed things up, but that just also didn't work. So what did we do? We figured out, like, we tried some things. We had a CMDB and we had some other systems for documentation. But yeah, that's not really easy because you still have that friction. You still have that fragmentation. So we put together a group. It was the tools team, and the tools team, they put together a developer portal. Why don't we put everything we have in that one place? So that people actually can find out who's running on call for that microservice. People can actually find out where's the documentation or who's even responsible for that microservice. Ways to automate, maybe a button to deploy an environment or to create your framework for your application so that you can just go ahead and start deploying your stuff, writing your software. So that team created a portal. It was called System Z, and System Z was the system to rule everything. That was the idea. And it was a success. People really, really liked it because then they could find out all those things. But there was this one mistake that we made, and that was that we put one team together and we made them responsible for that whole portal, for owning that portal, for owning that important instrument for developer experience. So just imagine the backlog they had at the time. Like everybody wanted features, everybody wanted to put in some self-service portal, but there were also those new domains, like there were data scientists, for instance. They had very, very specific needs. And the tools team, they tried to implement it, but the portal wasn't that easy to extend. It was not easy to let other people extend this software, so this portal, so to collaborate on that. So there's this measurement, which also was a bit of a trigger, and that is the number of days it takes engineers to get to their 10th pull request. Now we can discuss about that number. We can do so after this session probably because there's not enough time, but at least it's a measurement. It gives an indicator of how long it takes to onboard. So that went up to 60 days. Just imagine, you just went to the talk before, you think like, well, that Spotify is a cool company. So you go to the hiring process, everything is bleeding edge, and you go there and it takes you 60 days to do your 10th pull request. That's not good. So we knew we needed to change something there. So what we did is we go back to the drawing board. Right? So we started from scratch and reimagined what is a portal. And we had this in mind. We wanted to prioritize the developer experience. That's the most important thing. Look at the learnings because, well, you know, we didn't really achieve our goals there. So what did we do? We created a portal which was extensible. with the use of plugins. And the idea behind it is that everybody roughly wants the same thing. And we do a lot of research, you've learned in the session before probably, and we use that research to identify these key three things. The first one is everybody wants speed, but with some guardrails in place, safety. You want to scale, but you do not want to compromise on your quality. And chaos, well, chaos will always be there because there's all these tools and frameworks and versions of frameworks and the teams being autonomous. So chaos will be there. So you better control it, or like I like to put it, embrace the chaos, because you can't do without the chaos. You need that to innovate to some extent. And at the center of that was System Z, which we renamed to Backstage. And we went ahead and deployed that in our organization. We taught the developers how to develop their own plugins, how they could extend Backstage, how they could put in their self-service functionality to help the other members of the engineering team deploy stuff, to help them, their own teams, to deploy stuff, and to maybe look at observability or compliancy or other data, for instance, around your data pipeline. And it was a success. So the team which manages Backstage internally, it's around 5 to 6 people, and they basically are responsible for the portal. But 80% of the contributions to this portal come from our engineering teams, come from our future teams, come from our platform teams. Like, everybody can contribute to this. And there's over 120 plugins that we use today. I think we've over 180, but these ones I'm pretty sure that we use them. And then, well, we obviously talk a lot about our engineering culture and the tooling we use, and Backstage got mentioned more and more. And people were like, hey, well, can we get our hands on this? And we were thinking about that. Okay, well, how can we do that? And at some point during Hack Week, we decided to go ahead and open source it. It's a little over 2.5 years ago. And shortly after, we donated the project to the CNCF. So Spotify doesn't own it. It's in the true sense an open source project, and the CNCF ensures all the good things. This year took us quite a while, but we're now in incubation, which is a huge milestone for us, and we've released version 1.0 around the same time. And of course, we will continue to invest in this project. There's over 310 companies using Backstage that we know of, and that empowers roughly over 1 million engineers across the world. I talked about plugins, and the power of also open source Backstage is still the plugins, because that is basically the way you do it, the way you use Backstage. So for all kinds of tools, there's a plugin, and it's fairly uncomplicated to write your own plugins as well. And yeah, why open source? Well, with the risk of preaching to the choir, it is really fun to use an open source project, and you have a lot of benefits, because in order to create the best developer experience, it is good to have as much as perspectives and as much experience in the development of that portal, in the development of the plugin, to collaborate, also around the greater things, like Backstage is just a tool. So we have a lot of discussions in the community around how do you do developer experience, how do you create happy developers, how do you measure success? And it all is contributions to our project and making our community stronger. And if you adopt it, then of course with open source, you always have the opportunity to improve the product and contribute back to the community. So yeah, enough talking. Let me just show a quick demo of Backstage. So I'm gonna there you go. So let's imagine I'm this engineer and I just onboarded at this company. This company is called Rocket. This is their backstage version. It's called Rocket Engine. It's an interstellar space travel agency like the Uber for space. Anyways, I won't bother you with that. I decided to go ahead and work there. So my onboarding was super boring. It was the usual HR stuff, but luckily after one day I already received my shiny new MacBook. And the first thing I will do is open up. No way. No, no, no. This is not happening today. This is not happening. Wait, let me try again. No way. What's going on? I don't have time to debug this. But anyways, so believe me, this page. So normally I would use the documentation to go to a thing called the golden path, and I don't need to show it, I can just talk about it. But it's a best practice that we use at Spotify to onboard our engineers. Why? To let them know more about the engineering culture, about how, for instance, our whole backend is tied together, what their place in that constellation called engineering is. And actually, they go through several steps from implementing their local developer environment to going through every step needed to create a real application on our Spotify platform. So just imagine you started onboarding and you have a few days to go through all that content. It will show you the tools we're using. It will make you use Backstage, because that's basically at the heart of everything we do. It's for us mission critical to use it. We do everything with Backstage, basically. And you get to learn and play with it. And at the end of that whole golden path, you've basically launched your first application. Now that won't be the $1 million application, but at least you will feel really, really productive. Who can say that they have deployed their first application in the first week and it actually works? What we have for the backend is some sort of shuffle application which shuffles songs. Quite neat. Anyways, so I went through that whole onboarding thing, and I hope that my VPN is not flaky. So I'm gonna find out what other stuff we are owning within my team. So I go to the catalog. In the catalog, I can filter on several teams, and I'm looking at the lunch app here. So this is the app for ordering lunch while you book your travel. This is basically the homepage of the service where you put all these cards. And these cards are all plugins. Because Backstage is not there to replace your tool, it is there to aggregate all your tooling. It's not a single source of truth, but it, grabs all your single sources of truth and put them all together in this interface. So basically what you show here is what is valuable to you, to your engineering organization, for the type of service, for the system it belongs to, for the type of engineer that's watching this. I can see the relations with the other tools, with the other components, with the API it depends on here on the right side. And if I click CI/CD, for instance, it shows my GitHub actions. So yeah, again, normally if it's green, I would not dive into it. I don't care much about it. I just want to know if it's successful or not. And if it's not successful, I probably look at the steps. But to solve my problem, I go back to my IDE, I go to my cloud provider's portal, I go to GitHub and figure out where I made my mistake and just solve that. All this information, having it available in that one place, saves me from context switching. It saves me from going through all these portals. So for instance, if I want to know where the service is running, it's running in Azure, I can here directly go to the resource group, but also I can click the tags and it will list the tags in the Azure portal, making it easy for me to find the services. Now, I don't know about you, but if I ever need to do something, I'm always lost, because Well, we obviously don't have one service running. We use, for instance, GCP within Spotify. If I go to that portal, it's like, because I have access to everything. This really saves me a lot of time and context switching. But also things which are useful, like security recommendations. That's usually the stuff that you want to display in one place. Open pull request, you want to have that in one place. Status of your platform, you want to have that in one place. So yeah, anyways, this is all great news. So I see that I am missing something. Oh no, I am missing something. Oh yeah. So I have to add the application, and this shows how this metadata is put together. So it's a YAML file. Yay. Okay. Tough crowd. But this basically contains all the metadata and also the configuration for the plugins in the annotations. Now, people who are very familiar with Kubernetes, this is the Kubernetes object model. The only reason we chose this was because we knew it. And we thought, well, it looks kind of easy. Okay, so there's no real reason for it besides that. But also the relationships are defined in that same metadata file. Now, that metadata file is owned by the team owning the service. So yeah, if I want to register this, which I will do for the sake of, to make up for the demo with the documentation, right? So I'm going to register it, it will check, it will give me a review, and I have it right here. Okay, so it's there now. So it imported all the information, displayed it in Backstage. And if I look here at the CI/CD, then of course it's using Azure DevOps. You might have noticed. And the thing I want to show here is that even though it's another system, I still put the information in the same place. Why? Context switching. I don't care where it's running. I don't care what, except when things go wrong. So basically having the information in the same space really, really helps me. Okay, yeah, well, there's of course also the APIs. So for instance, really useful to put the documentation there as well to help me better understand like the APIs that other team built. Probably this would also have some documentation, integration testing. You would put that information there in these cards. So yeah, I feel kind of confident today. I'm going to create a new application. So this is using software templates. Software templates is a scaffolder functionality in Backstage. You basically deploy anything with it. Within Spotify, we create our whole environments with it. We create documentation with it. We create data pipe, well, everything, basically. Why would you use this then? Why don't do it yourself? Why not script it? Well, because the incentive is so high. Because when I fill out this form, basically anything that needs to happen, that will happen. It's all scripted. It's all there. So I go to this wizard. I put in my team name because only a team can own the metadata. I will choose a location. I will go with GitHub. Choose my organization and create a new repository here. And this will go ahead and deploy it depending if everything is working. And it will show up in Backstage, so it will be automatically registered. Now, I can imagine that you have a large environment and you want to pull in as much data as you can. For that, there's custom entity processors, and you can use those to automatically process all the data and make sure that it is there available for your engineering teams. Now, like I said, what? Okay, what I said, there's a lot of plugins available. Apparently somebody, this is open source, you know, somebody made an update at the website. Everything is new. But there's a lot of plugins available for many tools to use and help you. Okay, now I would like to go back to my presentation. Cool. So I hear you, oh, that's a fairly good demo. I kind of get what that portal is, and I understand why Spotify created this, but we are not Spotify. Please don't publish this on the website. No, you're not. Fun story, I worked at a company who wanted to implement the Spotify model, and I was said, we're not Spotify. Now I am. But why would you care about this? Well, because being a developer, we all agree on, is very complicated. This is just the CNCF landscape card. I know it's a bit, oh yeah, there you have the landscape card again to show it's complex. Well, it is complex, because if I would also add all the tools that all the vendors have to help you with your productivity and better manage your environment, it would not even fit on the screen. You couldn't read it. It's that complicated. And you want to embrace it, because you can't say, well, we're not going to use that tool. No, you want to use that tool, but that tool needs to be adopted in your company. Having a card available, for instance, in your developer portal is really valuable and will help adoption with that. And onboarding at your company, working at your company, if you go through all the tools that you use and you put them on posters, I want to do observability. Yeah, we have 10 tools for that. Oh, I want to ship my software. Yeah, that team uses Jenkins, that team uses GitLab. So it is all there. But another angle. So there was this mention in the previous talk about developer productivity. Well, developer productivity is really, really nice and really, really important. We like to focus on developer happiness. One way to properly measure that, we think, is the SPACE framework. And the SPACE framework uses 5 different axes to look at your developer population. So for instance, satisfaction and well-being is really important. It is about feeling a part of your team. It is about the tooling you have available. Are you satisfied with that? And you can look at it on multiple angles. And probably you can imagine how a developer portal can enable that collaboration and can enable everybody being on the same page. And then there's the performance, which is basically the value of the output you're delivering, like customer satisfaction, that sort of information. You would like to display that so that you're aware of that, because that is why you're working. That is what you're doing. And if you only look at the activity, those are counters, and it might help me, especially these few times when I have my performance conversations with my manager. I don't know if you have any, but that's basically the moment that you also look a bit at activity. It's good for me to know how I'm doing. And on a team level, it might be a little bit different. But having that information available on those multiple levels can really help me understand better what's happening. And if you zoom out and you look at, for instance, only the activity or only at the DORA metrics, then you might say, oh, we're doing fine. That person is stellar, delivering stellar work. But the person might as well be running into a burnout, right? And you need tooling to have that insight. You need tooling to enable that. Collaboration and communication, inner sourcing, transparency, those are all important elements, because you need to be able to find the right information, and everybody should be able to find that same information, because only that way you can all play together, because everybody can access the same information. Just think about that documentation in that one place, or being able to find all the applications that you're using and all the information about the APIs, right? And your flow, and I can't say this enough, switching is hard. Context switching doesn't take only that 5 minutes to do Alt-Tab and to switch to the next, to that other screen. It might take your productivity away for maybe even half an hour or longer, because you need to go to that other portal, think, oh, 2-factor, where's my phone? I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for my phone. Takes me ages, and when I'm back, I already forgot what I was doing. So to summarize, Backstage is one front end for your entire infrastructure. That was a good joke, by the way. It is not there to replace your tools. It is not there to change all your ways of working. It is one front end. It's a single pane of glass to put together all your single sources of truth. You have multiple, you know it, I know it, we all know it. And you put that in one place. Your tooling that you want to introduce, that migration that you want to do, put everything in that one front end. I think like thing is maybe better because it should be one front end for anything, right? Anything that's useful for you as an engineer and your engineering organization. Yeah, it's a platform, so usually you have a small team managing Backstage, people develop plugins, and people use the plugins. People use the self-service functionality. And you can write the plugins yourself, if they're not available in open source. We've looked at creating new software using software templates, so that is up to your best practices, compliancy, whatever. Your observability is there inside everything, and you can start just writing code. Managing all your software and exploring, actually finding stuff inside your organization. The plugin architecture is basically the success of Backstage. And it's super important to give the power into the hands of your engineering workforce. If you decide to implement Backstage, then adoption is the most important thing next. Because you can put a tool there, but the tool is just that, you know? You need to put some work in that. You need to create a community around it. Being able to create those plugins really, really empowers your engineering workforce to do the best thing. Because why? Happy developers make happy code. And unhappy developers, they will still be happy at some point, but they will be walking away with a box in their hands, right? So just keep that in mind. That can always happen. Now, how do you start? You start small, find a problem, solve that with a small team, and with that knowledge which you built up, not only about Backstage, but also about your interactions with the community, about how this project actually works. What is the release cadence? How do I upgrade? All that knowledge you share within your company and drive the adoption. And this is a link to the Getting Started documentation. If you want to try it out, you will be good to go within anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. And if you like it, then you can continue with the rest of the tutorials to set up some first integrations. If you decide to use Backstage and you're like, yay, then please let me know. If you think like, well, I tried it, it's not that good, or I don't like this specific thing, then, well, let me know as well, right? Thank you so much for your attention. I wish you a lovely day. I'm looking forward to the rest of the day. And yeah, some questions probably.
Yes, indeed. So let's first give her a round of applause. Okay. And of course, we'll do a couple of questions. So I think, you know, the question I always ask is, and especially with something like Backstage, is where do you start?
Sorry, where?
Where do you start? How do you start? What's your first step to successfully deploying this?
Think of why. Why am I looking at this tool? What am I trying to solve? I have a lot of conversations with people who are interested in Backstage, and then they say, yeah, we have this problem with our documentation. Okay, what is the problem with your documentation? Well, we have Confluence, and we have Google Docs, and we have documentation spread all around the organization, and that legacy system. But it's good to step back from those problems and think, okay, what is the bigger issue that I'm trying to solve? Because you could say, oh, well, this plugin will solve everything. No, it will not. That plugin won't solve it. It's what you do with it. It's how you drive the adoption. It is how you build a community around Backstage. So that is basically what you're trying to do. Look at the bigger problem, but start small with a small team, and from there gradually build up your experience and share that internally. Because Backstage basically is an inner sourcing powerhouse, you know, and you need to shift that culture a little bit.
I like that angle. Don't try to solve organizational problems with technical solutions. That's basically what you're saying.
Basically, yeah.
Awesome. All right. So
Thank you. That's
as a
a lot
small
shorter
thank you,
too.
as a small thank you, here's something to illuminate your backstage.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take just a minute. Give her a round of applause. We'll take just a minute to